First speaker after lunch, so the best position ever. So I'm going to try this that I heard about earlier. Howdy. All right, I guess it works. Fantastic. Well, I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about Beyond the Bayous for a Healthier Harris County. And so first, and you heard a little bit about this in my bio, but I'm especially excited to talk to you about this because this chance to work on this project prompted me to change my career focus. I did start out as an architect and working on healthcare campuses. And I actually just saw Professor George Mann here in the audience earlier. He had to leave, but he has been working in healthcare and architecture for years and years. And he is one of the reasons that I started thinking about the connection between nature and health. And the job of architecture, healthcare architecture especially, is very stressful. And I realized that I was getting out into nature and exercising and going to the seaside, doing things like that to really reduce my stress and make sure that I was keeping myself well. And I decided that I wanted to really work on projects that would allow people that connection to nature. And so I got the opportunity to do that with the Houston Parks Board. And so Houston Parks Board is a not-for-profit. We were started in 1976 to bring private money into public parks at a point in time when the mayor of Houston thought that everyone had a backyard, and so we didn't really need to build any more parks. And so the mission is really the work that we do to create, improve, protect, and advocate for parks for everyone. So it's something I could really get behind and really wanted to work on. So Houston Parks Board, through its history, has worked on over 250 parks and has opened up 14,000 acres of green space for the public through parks and trails, all working with the City of Houston, the Parks and Recreation Department. Yes, and so they've been a fantastic partner throughout our history. Then in 2012, we started our Bayou Greenways initiative. So this is a project to build 150 miles of trails and open up 3,000 acres of green space along 9 of Houston's major waterways. And that brings 1.5 million Houstonians within 1.5 miles of a Bayou Greenway. So the impact of that could be amazing. And I was excited to go back to my hometown and be able to impact my community members in such a way. So the project was a public-private partnership. And so $100 million was funded through a city bond, and Houston Parks Board raised $120 million to match that. So we have been working with partners such as the city, Harris County Flood Control District, the county, to implement this shared vision to create an equitable access to parks throughout Houston. And so what is a Bayou Greenway? So we think of a Bayou Greenway really as a linear park. Its main elements are in our case, a 10-foot wide concrete trail that runs for miles, in some cases 26 miles, along some of our bayous. And then we open up the green space next to those trails for access. And we create access points, gateways for the community, as well as pedestrian bridges to continue that access. We really wanted the system the 150-mile system to really feel like a system, feel like once you got into it, you really understood, you felt comfortable, you knew what to look for, you had good wayfinding. So we have a standard wayfinding packages with signage so that people know what to look for when they get there. There's benches, there's trash cans and recycling. And importantly, we have 911 mile markers every quarter of a mile. There's a little disc on the ground and you can call that number and 911 knows where to come and get you on these trails along bayous, which can be kind of tricky. And so because this was a publicly funded through city bond, in 2011, Houston Parks Board, we commissioned a study to look at the health benefits of the Bayou Greenways so that we could talk to the public about it. Why should you be voting for this bond? And so we worked with Professor John Crompton of A&M and Marsh Darcy Partners, and they looked at environmental health, the economic health that these parks can bring, and then of course, mental and physical health. So a lot of the things we've been talking about today. And so as you can see, they came up with the estimate of saving $90 million a year with all those benefits together. And so for a $220 million project, that is a 3-year payback, which is amazing in terms of payback period times. And so currently, and we started this project in 2012, it's 2023, we have opened 132 miles. We are 134, it's always changing. And we have 32 miles that are still in progress in either design or construction. And so the system will be 166 miles, and we'll have raised over the $120 million to build this system. So we're really excited about that. And we, from the beginning, knew that if we're going to build this and invest all of this money into this amenity, we had to make sure that it was well maintained. And so the Houston Parks Board was able to get a 380 agreement with the city of Houston so that we can get a little bit of tax increment from the properties along the bayous and put that into a maintenance fund so that we could take care of these amenities for the communities. So we now take care of 2,800 acres of green space, 92 miles, lots of bridges. We do things like mowing and graffiti abatement and a lot of flood cleanup as well after big hurricanes. So we have a whole team of multiple people, 30 people or so that do this work for us. And so then, now that the system is well underway, we wanted to go back and look at that 2011 study and really understand, were our estimates correct, or is it helping the health of our county? And so we worked with the Center for Health and Nature. So how I met Gita and Jay and their amazing team. And so we looked at, well, first of all, how do you really do that? And so hospitalization records were one way that we could really kind of compare across zip codes that have Bayou Greenways versus those that don't. And there was a correlation found they looked at probably 12 or more different health conditions. And the 3 that had the biggest correlation were obesity, heart disease, can't say those words, I just call it heart disease, and heart attack admissions. And so and those are based on zip codes where 30% of the population of those zip codes live within a 10-minute walk access to a Bayou Greenway. So that goes back to Howard Frumkin's talk about, access and 10-minute walks and the closeness of the access that people have to parks and green spaces that can really affect their health. So we think that the Bayou Greenways are doing their job, and we're really excited about that. But what's next? How do we really look at expanding the benefits of Bayou Greenways further and into our communities? And we started looking at that, and really the opportunities are overwhelming. So Bayou Greenways, it started with 9 major waterways and 150 miles. Well, you can see the Bayou Greenways overlaid on all of the 800 miles of waterways that Harris County has. And those are natural channels. And so those are 23 major channels. So that is a lot to think about. And then we also have most of those bayous run east and west. And so now there's an opportunity to connect north and south through using power line easement corridors and trails in those. So now we can really think about connecting up that system that we started with a backbone of the Bayou Greenway. So we had to really look at that group of projects and think about how we prioritize. So first of all, we looked at the projects themselves, and how do they fit in? How do they connect to the Bayou Greenway system? And then what other destinations do they connect along the way? What neighborhoods, medical centers, things like that. And then ecology, how can we is there the potential to increase water quality or air quality or habitat along these projects? What's the potential there? And then the last per project is, what are the major challenges? Do we have to cross roads? Are there land ownership issues? Things like that that would really maybe prohibit that specific project from happening. So there's still, after you look at that, a lot of projects that you can do. So really then it's looking at equity. And another thing we've talked about a lot, and really how many people is that project going to affect? And then how many, like what's the social vulnerability index of those folks? And so, and the SVI is a community for the Center for Disease Control identified number. It takes into account things like socioeconomic status, racial and ethnic demographics, household composition, and then transportation and housing. And so if you look at all of that together and you locate, we talked about earlier, if you locate these projects that can help people that have the most problems with the obesity and heart attacks that tend to live in these high social vulnerability areas, and then maximize our benefits. So that's what we've been trying to do, come up with the list of projects. So you can see on there, it's draft for discussion. So we are really continuing to refine that list and talk with partners about which projects are important to them. Now, how can we really make this a system that works for our entire community? And so there you have it. There's a basic idea of how we can take the Bayou Greenways and build on top of those to create a connected system of parks and trails throughout Harris County. And so on the screen, you can see we have identified 225 miles. So that's a lot more. So we are excited about that, and that could grow or shrink depending on a lot of different factors. And so there are three main types of projects that we are looking at in that system. The first one is really just looking at Bayou Greenways and expanding on those. So we can, the Bayou Greenway initiative stopped at the city limits because it was funded by a city bond, but the bayous don't do that. So we can extend those bayous even longer throughout the county. And then we can work on some of the other major waterways that I mentioned earlier. So one example that we're looking at is the Vince Bayou Greenway that is in Pasadena, Texas. And so that will run 4 miles from, and it's Memorial Park in the north. It runs 4 miles south to Strawberry Park in the south. And it affects a very high population and with a high social vulnerability index. There's a lot of multifamily housing along there. It's a very highly Hispanic population. And so it's really a project that can do a lot of benefits. And our partners on that have been the Pasadena Economic Development Corporation and the city of Pasadena, because they both also realized that this project could improve the quality of life for their communities. And then another project type that I talked about briefly is the power line easement corridors. So this is looking at our center point power line easements and building trails in those. So connecting east and west to our north and south bayous. And one of our examples there is Spring Branch Trail. So that trail, when it's complete, will be 11 miles long. And it will connect from White Oak Bayou in the east to Addicks Reservoir in the west. So that these longer linear parks or trails, they affect a lot more people because they're long and linear. So it will has a high population that it will then connect to the trail, and then that they from there can connect to other parks and schools along the way. And one of the main benefits of this one is that there are 4 schools directly on the trails, so we can also help with safe routes to school for a lot of kids in the area. And this one, we opened the first segment in 2020, and it's being well used, and we're continuing to build out that project. And then our last project type are hub parks. And so those are, we now have a regional trail system that we're building. So now we want to add in large parks along that system for people to, as they're traveling along the parks, have more of a area with amenities that they can stop and enjoy. And one big opportunity for that are detention basins. So Harris County Flood Control District is building many detention basins across Harris County to help with our flooding problems in Houston, which are enormous, as everyone knows. And so our opportunity is then to go back and to add recreation elements to some of those detention basins so that they can be used 365 days a year and not just when it's flooding. And so one of the examples of that type of project that we're working on is the Hill at Sims. So this is a 100-acre detention basin. When built out, we estimate it'll be about a $28 million project. You can see it affects less people because it's a specific park, but it's attached directly to our Sims Bayou Greenway project. So it'll get a lot more people can get to it. And you can see it's just a beautiful space. Harris County Flood Control District kind of did a little bit more on this detention basin than typical, making it a sinuous form and creating a hill from the top of which you could see downtown and the medical center. So it's really just an amazing location. And so we'll be doing things like providing trails, a nature center, a hilltop overlook structure, water access, so that the community there can have access to nature right at their across the street from them, really, in a place that's already there and they don't even know about. And one thing about this area is there's a lot of development pressure. So some of the trees that you see on the edges there are already turning into neighborhoods. So we're trying to get in there and save as much of that as we can. And then again, talking about partnerships, you know, in order to expand this system, we need to expand the partners that we're working with. And many of you in this room can also be partners, not only with implementing the system, but in helping us to learn how to make that system even better. And so a couple other things we're doing along with expanding the system is enhancing the greenways and then engaging communities so that the communities know about and really get to love and use the greenways. Of course, the first step is making sure that the system is well maintained. And we inherited quite a few trails in the original system that we're starting to replace. And this will be an ongoing thing throughout its lifetime. So continuing to keep up with maintenance so that people enjoy and feel comfortable using the trails. And then there's the potential of improving ecology. We have a conservation group now. And so they're looking at how can we add in prairies and wetlands and improve the health of the forests and plant trees. And then there's also an important public engagement and education element there that we can also work on to improve the ecology and enhance the experience of the greenways. We can also create senses of place along the greenways. So we started out with very similar amenities. So the greenways look like one cohesive system, but we want to make sure that the communities along the way feel like they're part of the system. And so we can do things like murals, like fix-it stations and rental stations, interpretive signage and sculpture. So all things that we can work with the community there to enhance that area of the Greenway. And then we also want other organizations to get out and use the Greenway. So encouraging activity along the Greenway, like bike parades and kayak rides, and working with other groups like Green's Bayou Coalition that has a kayak ride every year down Green's Bayou. So working with groups to really get people out and using the Greenways that people know about them. And then we also want to engage the community. We're doing things like Agents of Discovery, which is an interpretive app that kids can download to their phone. They can get out onto the Greenways, and then they can learn about the Greenways while they're there, and mix in the technology and nature together. And then another thing we're doing is really trying to develop park and trail champions. And so you'll see on the screen here, and Linda Carper and some of our community champions are back there. So they're waving right now. Hey guys. Yeah, so these are folks that are community members that are really invested and really behind the projects, and getting their communities out and exercising and being at parks and on trails. And so we're really trying to involve the community in the whole process. So how we design the trails, how they're constructed, how they're maintained, and then give everybody empower folks to be able to do activities out there and to help to really just steward the trails so that they really become part of their community, and it's comfortable for their community to use and others as well. So I want to say thanks to all of you guys for being here. Yeah. That's our vision for a healthier Harris County. So we're going beyond the bayous. We are expanding the system of bayou greenways to create a connected network of parks and trails. We're enhancing them to create senses of place along the way, and engaging the community so that this parks and trail system will be well used and well loved for all of Harris County. And we're so I wanted to say thank you to everyone, and to point out again that you guys can all be partners with us, and we would love to hear from you, and I can then answer any questions later.
Thank you, Lisa. I have to say it was one of the most rewarding experiences as a researcher, especially when you come in and you get a big data set and you look at all admissions and all of Houston. Does it have any correlation with these bayou greenway paths? And we're looking over time, hoping for the best. Well, we got the best results. We did get strong results. And so it's quite rewarding when you go into that really blindly as a researcher. So thank you so much for the presentation, and we hope to work with you for many, many years to come.